So speaking of brands that are out of business, this is something that someone brought to my attention months ago, and I was originally going to write an article, but then, life got in the way. Volkl Snowboards has pulled the plug, which I'm assuming the people listening in the U.S. are going, Volkl makes snowboards? Well, yes.
Yep.
Yes, they do.
They do.
They did. They made a lot of, did you ever look at their line?
Yeah, it was actually big, and it actually looked really good.
Yeah, the last time I rode one was when Marcus from Ask a Black Snowboarder was sponsored by Volkl, and we were living in Washington. I rode a Squad and a Cole from them, and maybe a Select. The boards were actually really phenomenal, but if you looked at the tech in there, they had so much fucking technology in their boards. And it mystifies me that a brand like Volkl, I mean, the U.S. push was never done right, so it always failed. But when Forum did go under, they picked up a bunch of their riders.
Right.
And they had it. And if you followed their social media, the presence that they had was absolutely huge. And
I mean, KpWJWC ended up on Volkl, didn't he?
KpWJWC was on there. I think Mitchie Shits himself. There's a bunch of women that were on there. I can't think off the top of my head, but they had some, and the videos that they were putting out with their team were phenomenal.
And they actually had decent placements on a lot of the U.S. or the European competitions. For some reason, none of those dudes competed in the U.S., but I remember catching European Open last year and saw like 3 or 4 people on Volkl.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. But the technology, I mean, they had board and binding. The bindings were basically
I think they're Fast Techs.
SP or Fast Tech. Yeah, they were Fast Tech, but the boards, the technology that they had there. But they went out of business, and it pisses me off because I've been hounding their brand manager to get me product, and he just couldn't see a viability. Well, dude, maybe if you'd sent them to me, more people would have bought them.
Even in Europe.
In Europe.
They could have bought them in Europe, too,
Yeah, I remember him telling me, well, we're just not concentrated in the U.S. Yeah, well, you know what? My third largest city is London, England, and Britain, and my fifth is one of the ones in Germany that I probably can't pronounce. It's whatever, Munich, Munchen. Maybe it's Munich. Munich. I don't know. I know how to pronounce Munich, but yeah, no, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's just a sign of the times. Like, they kind of just they were bigger over in Europe, obviously, than the U.S., but they just sort of disappeared and went under. And I mean, at any given point, I'm convinced that there's probably about 10 snowboard brands in the U.S. that are about to go out of business. At any given point. If they don't refinance their loan or something, they're just gone. And I mean, even talking about loans, you look at what happened with Venture, and they took a whole year off.
Right, yeah.
Because the bank didn't... It was something with a bank loan and stuff, but I mean, they came back. I mean, that was just good that they came back. They got it figured out. But, it's just the way the funding is. But you look at how these brands have all this presence and, they're inflated and they look huge. And then it's like just someone comes along and just pops the balloon and you're just like, oh, fuck. There
was nothing in there.
There was nothing in there.
Right.
And it's sad because sometimes you see brands that actually have really great technology in there. And Volkl did. I mean, they had...
Their shapes were awesome.
3D bases, high-end materials, interesting shapes, interesting side cuts. They had something for everyone. And
they really did. Yeah, their line was concise, but they managed to cover pretty much everybody. Like, whatever you wanted to do, Volkl had something for you. But they didn't have, like, 30 different snowboards.
Yeah. Well, and but at the same time, I know that there's going to be someone that probably comments, well, fuck them, they're a ski brand. Who
ski
cares?
brands are making some of the best snowboards on the market right now.
This is true. I've ridden them.
Yeah. Who cares?
It's a stupid argument. That's another one for another podcast. We'll get into that one in the future. But, it just says something to me when you look at all these brands that somehow they're fucking surviving and they suck.
Yeah.
And a brand that obviously was bigger couldn't make it, which is probably more in tune with what's going on inside the whole snowboard industry and the retail segment and everything that's out there. I mean, I've seen so much change since I started Angry almost 10 years ago in how things are done, and how people change and where they buy everything and stuff. And so my opinions and my beliefs have had to change to accommodate you, the listener, and stuff like that. But you've seen it. I mean, Kevin is the assistant manager at a store that I used to work at, and when I worked there, the numbers were way bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm pretty sure.
We're growing again, and I think a lot of that has to do with the changing landscape in winter retail right now.
Well, and that's the whole thing. But when I was there, it was shooting a fish in a barrel. If I didn't sell 10 snowboard setups a day, I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you have days like that consistently, like weeks on end, where you're selling 10 full board, boot, binding, jacket, helmet, pant setups, you know?
Yeah.
And even then, after I left there and I was working at the lumberyard in Breck for my friend Deeds, who's the owner there, and I can see the difference in a core shop. And, you know, we were coming into more people that were educated from the internet, and they didn't want to listen to us. And I would talk to this is hilarious. I had a guy come in, and he was talking about the asymmetrical from Smokin'.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I read this and I read that. And I go, did you read this on Angry Snowboard? He goes, yeah. And he goes, he said this. And I go, I didn't say that. I had to tell him legitimately to his face and be like, I wrote the damn thing.
Yeah, that is me.
That is me. I work here too. No, this is what I said and this and this. But you've seen that level of education and how people are changing. And I think any brand right now should understand how to engage people more in the nerdy tech side of things, which it blows my mind that we're the first nerdy tech podcast for snowboarding right now.
Yeah.
You know, I keep getting these press releases from all these people trying new podcasts that have marketing and PR people. I'm like, cool. You're basically ripping off the Not Snowboarding podcast. Shout out to Nate Mousson. If you haven't caught the Not Snowboarding podcast, it's the NPR of snowboarding podcast. It's good. Yeah. This isn't good. This is awful and horribly put together. But
why are you listening to it?
I don't know. I don't know any of this stuff. But anyways, so that's kind of my spiel. Like, I'm sad to see Volkl go because I never got to ride their stuff. It's
Same. Yeah.
Well, and look at this too. No one made any real big hubbub when Oppo disappeared too. I mean, Sage won the fucking Olympics on that board, and they disappeared, and they had some really amazing shapes too. And then you like look at that stuff, and
nobody really made a huge deal about when Omatic stopped and when Atomic stopped either.
Well,
Omatic a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think what hurt them was they went right to Sports Authority that first year, and then they tried to do that. But yeah, Atomic. Now, there's hands down, Atomic had some of my favorite boards that I have ever ridden in my life. Like, to the day, I still say the Atomic Hatchet was one of the smartest marketing ploys. When you could create a board at 239 with a tri-radial side cut in it that had snap, that was camber dominant, that you could ride all over the mountain if you wanted to, and you progressively raised the price. The last year that they made that board, it was only $289, so it was a sub $300 board. I think I owned 2 of those. I loved the way those rode. Their bindings were a little iffy, but the boots were actually decent.
I never even saw the boots.
Yeah, well, I think they were selling them more in Europe. But yeah, you look at that, and so Atomic got the plug pulled, Oppo got the plug pulled, Volkl got the plug pulled, Forum obviously got the plug pulled. But you see these brands that actually have big followings, and you know, you have an Atomic now, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I had a guy, Firestarter.
Yes,
is that what it is?
Yes, it's that directional cambered stiffer.
Yeah, it was like their high end.
It was the second highest end board they had for directional freeride, but. You know, they had great boards. They had the Axiom, and I mean, they were doing an inlay with a ceramic inlay with an edge that kept the base sitting a little higher in that area. So when you'd slide, you wouldn't slide on your edges to reduce the friction.
Yeah.
The Alibi was really good. And the funny thing is, like, I loved the Alibi for so long. That's one board I wish I kind of had bought at the time.
Yeah.
And I still see people with that board, and I just sit there and go, I wonder if I just offered them $50 if they would sell it to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I still run into people that are still riding that stuff, but it speaks volumes about the global snowboarding thing when these giant ski companies that have a snowboarding offshoot can't make it work when they have such a great product. And that's, you know, we're not debating the whole ski companies, snowboard company only thing here. This is like pure nerd perspective. These
good product,
boards,
bad product.
Good product, bad product. Yeah, you know, I mean, I rode the Oppo boards, and the problem that I had with them was the stance.
Yeah,
the minimum stance, if I kicked my discs in sideways and pushed them in, it was 22.5 on most boards.
Right.
So reference was like 24 inches.
Yeah, which also means that most of them I couldn't even ride because I ride at 21, and back then I was riding like 21 to 21 and a half, and back then I was riding like 20 to 20 and a half, so I couldn't even get close.
Yes.
Like even riding one of those without like my knees hurting.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole thing that people didn't realize, but it's like I said, at any given point, I feel there's 10 brands that could just disappear, and which would it be a bad thing for snowboarding? No. Would it suck for the people working there? Yes. And I would probably lose a couple friends outside the industry because there'd be nothing for them and whatnot. But it's, you know, when you look at a board based on the tech and not the name associated with it and the construction, it's really interesting to see how everything actually comes together and works. And
the other thing I've always found interesting is you take ski brands and the snowboards that they're making and how much tech goes into those, and then compare similar tech to snowboard specific brands, and the snowboard specific brands are always charging more for it.
Yeah.
The ski brands always manage to put way more tech in a board for way less money.
Well, and then that goes back to that whole atomic debate. I mean, the Axiom was only $439. The Alibi was $449, I think, when it came out. I think it got up to $489. But I mean, their most expensive. They had a board in their line that was like $700. It was above the Firestarter, I think. It was like $700 board.
Yeah, like speaking of the Firestarter, like that's really their high end, and then they have like whatever the $700 one, and that's their like ultra premium.
Yeah, but Burton has that with
the
custom mystery. There's the Cygnus,
exactly,
Palmer
like that
Crown
kind of board. So for $550 being basically their literally highest end board, I mean that's almost a mid price snowboard now is $550.
Yeah.
So, and you see that even with some of the ski brands that are making snowboards out there now, with Solomon and even Rossi, are putting like, you know, really, really good boards, and their high end stuff is still a little bit lower price than a lot of other brands.
Well, look at the Gypsaw; it's like $389, I think.
Yeah,
you know, and it comes in at that, and that board's really fun.
It should be a $500 snowboard.
Should be
slapped with snowboard brand.
I know, and even the Gypsaw HD, which is the stiffer, bigger brother, is only $550.
Right.
It mystifies me. I mean, their most expensive board is the Xavier De La Rue,
right,
at $699,
and that one totally makes sense at $699. I think that one's actually accurately priced as far as if you were to select snowboard brand.
Exactly.
That one actually falls in line, but the rest of them, yeah, they're cheap.
They are,
yeah.
You know, and you wonder why certain things are priced that way and whatnot, and it's one of those things that I don't understand why it is that these brands can't make it. Well, actually, Oppo I understand, because they were financed by a billionaire who wanted to make them the next Burton, dumped all this money and didn't see a return on his investment. He doesn't understand. It's a long-term game. You have to play long-term. Yeah. You have to play a long-term game. You cannot play a wham bam and be done. But we've seen that with other brands, like when I was helping out Echelon and stuff like that. And
that was the other one I was going to say, is they were making really good snowboards for.
Well, they had some interesting tech. Yeah, they had some really interesting tech in there, and the price points were right. But at the same time, you can't spend $3 million and not sell a snowboard.
Yeah,
and you see that, but you know, it's a return on the investment and whatnot. But you know, those guys, I remember when I watched them have a full-blown meltdown inside their booth at SIA, and I was like, this brand has 6 months of lifetime left in it. Sent an email, because they had hired me to be a consultant on different tech specs and getting things and like how they should market stuff. So, you know, shout out to them for actually paying me. If any other company wants to hire Kevin or we are available. But I watched this and I wrote this huge email and I said, this is what you need to do to get yourself back on track. You guys need to stop doing this, and this. And the spending is fucking absurd. What you're doing. I understand keeping the price down, but you have to sell a fucking snowboard at some point.
Yeah.
And maybe that was the problem with Volkl. I don't know. Oppo, I understand. Atomic actually had really good sell-through. It was something about from the corporate level that they just didn't want to keep investing in it.
Yeah, because the other interesting thing is they basically cut it right around like 2009, at least in the U.S., right around there.
I think it was
a little after that.
No, I think it was like, well, let's see. I was living in Steamboat still, and they were around because Ted Lord was still working with them. So maybe it was like 07, 08. Yeah, 09.
It was right around there.
Yeah, it was like maybe 09.
And they just cut them in the U.S. And I thought it was really strange because that was before we'd had that. I mean, it was before we had those two gnarly winters where it started actually, like the winter itself started to affect business. And that's when we saw Forum get cut, was like right after that. And that's when everybody started downsizing. So it happened like 3 or 4 years before that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know where the motivation came from to cut Atomic Snowboards.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's,
Maybe the ski side was doing too bad that they had to.
It could be. It could be. Well, I mean, look at Rosnell almost went under that one time, and I've heard rumors that K2 was going to get the plug pulled, but I don't believe that one. They're just too big of a company for that.
They have the #1 rental equipment in the world.
No, Rosnell does.
Is it Rosie now?
No, Rosie always has.
Oh.
If you actually count units sold, Rosnell sells more than anyone.
Yeah, well,
but that's because
K2's got to be second then.
No, I think it goes Rosnell, Burton, K2.
Oh, I'm talking ski.
Oh, ski.
Yeah.
Ski, yes. If you okay, yeah. If you're, I was going with snowboard, but no, Rosnell's still #1 in rental. Yeah, because you can just get rental fleet. I mean, look at any rental shop you go into, and I guarantee you it's a Rosie.
We got about half and half probably. I think our just like standard rental fleet is that, but then most of our like demo rental stuff is all Rosie. But either way, yeah. I mean, KT's never gone under. They have so much rental business. Like that's never gonna. No, that's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that's just it's really interesting to me to think that these brands are out there with such a big following, social media presence, good team, good marketing, good behind a great product, and then just
they're just
dead. So I don't know. It's one of those things. But anyone got any suggestions on if we should put together a snowboard company Deadpool? We'll just put it up here on the green screen. We'll just have a whole list of different companies, and maybe we'll see if we can get Vegas in on the odds, and we'll just go from there.
Does anybody have any Volkl Snowboards you want to send us? I still want to ride one.
Me too, actually. If anyone
send us one of the weird shapes.
Send me actually the park board with the 3D base on it. That's the one I really want. I think it's like the Squad Prime or the Squad Selecta or something like that. Yeah,
I don't know. Send us snowboards. Do it.
Yeah, you won't.